I think I'm losing my mind because I have been unable to control my rage for the past few days. Though I was supposed to get married 3 days ago, I am on the run because of something I couldn't control. It all started when I was getting ready for the ceremony, and I heard those two bastards say something inappropriate and personal about Mia. They were her friends, and she always hung out with them, so there was no way what they said could be wrong. It simply had one explanation. She did those things they were discussing among themselves. I clenched my fists to calm myself, but it wasn't working. I worked hard these past few months to control my blind rage, but hearing about her cheating on me made it all go to waste. I wanted to ask her if what they said was true, hoping for her to deny them, but as I walked to her chambers, I found the same guys laughing and talking to her. She was making a fool out of me. Did she think I was this gullible? Who knows if that child in her womb was even mine? All of a sudden, I felt disgusted with her. I had to pay them back for humiliating me like this, so I waited for those two guys to go someplace quiet. Till then, I decided to stand by. But the moment I saw Mia's parents talking to them, I could feel my eyes burning with exasperation. Were they all involved in this? This thought was like oil in my fury. There was no way I would wait for the right moment anymore, so I decided to act. "Hey guys, do you mind helping me with something?" I asked, my fist still clenched, but a forced smile was on my face. "Yeah man, what is it?" the one in the blue suit asked. They probably thought I was nervous and couldn't guess what was coming. "It's something I planned for Mia, but I don't want anything to go wrong because it's for after the wedding ceremony. So you guys need to come with me," I said, trying to be as convincing as possible. "Sure," they said in sync and started following me. I led them to the closed gift room, and the moment they entered, I took out the screwdrivers from my pocket that I grabbed from the man who was here to fix lighting, and before they could turn back, I stuck them on the side of their heads. They couldn't even scream as their eyes widened before they dropped dead instantly, without even realizing what happened to them. I heard a gasp and turned around, only to find Mia's cousin Lily. As she was about to scream, I put my palm over her mouth and pulled her inside, only to stab her in the neck. I left her with the other two, fixed my clothes, and headed to Mia's chambers. She was sitting in white, looking stunning, and my heart wavered momentarily. But realizing how this striking beauty cheated on me without a heartbeat fumed me. I started walking toward her, but a couple of giggling girls stopped me before I could enter. "You can't go in there. You aren't allowed to meet her till the ceremony." After saying that, they dragged me to where the ceremony was to commence. I wanted to stop their giggling immediately, but it would attract too much attention, so I played along. I stood at the altar waiting for her arrival as the groomsmen stood beside me. It felt like they were taking forever to bring her here. Suddenly the song started, and with exasperation, I glanced at the end of the aisle when I saw her entering with a smile, only to drop my jaw in awe. I nervously tugged at my tie without even realizing it. She approached me with a look in her eyes that I believed was love. I remembered what it was that made me fall for her. That beaming twinkle on her lips made my heart race, and those deep, innocent eyes made me want to drown in them for all eternity. I couldn't see her properly before, but she looked ethereal in that dress. Her hair pulled back in complex braids to form an intricate design around her face. A thought crossed my mind that maybe I could forgive her this once. Perhaps I could ask her later if what those men said was true. I took a deep breath and picked up the box containing her ring. I grabbed her soft little hands and put it on that fragile finger. It was then her turn to put a ring on my finger. Her light touch sent multiple jolts down my body. My eyes filled with tears as I heard her say her vows. I couldn't believe it. Such sincere words with such a gorgeous yet deceiver's mouth. Those men's words echoed in my ears as I realized I had already once been deceived by this enchantress. My mind started to spin, and I couldn't control it any longer. I put my right hand inside my pocket, grabbed the screwdriver still in there, and as she leaned for a kiss after saying I do, I took it out and stabbed it in her heart. Multiple gasps in horror followed my action, but my eyes were stuck inside those green ones that widened in disbelief. I felt something stinging my heart as I saw her white dress turning red. Tears began streaming down my face as I heard her ask why as she stumbled. I didn't let her fall and held her in my arms as her body gave up. Screams erupted all over the corners while I only focused on her as I replied, "Because you cheated." My voice quivered. I didn't expect the reaction she gave me as she took her last fading breaths. It tore my heart apart in 1,000 pieces as I realized I couldn't see her anymore. That was when I heard someone scream her name. I turned to see another girl with a physique similar to my Mia running toward the source of the voice. I felt my heart sinking as I realized what just happened. It wasn't my Mia who was unfaithful. My world came crashing down my head as I realized I destroyed everything with my own hands due to my insecurity and lack of faith in her. I hugged her lifeless body tightly and screamed her name, calling out for her. But she didn't respond. She was gone. That was when I heard someone say they had called 911, and I realized I couldn't stay here. I glanced at my love for the last time before standing up and running out of the wedding hall. Everyone was so panicked that they didn't even realize I was gone. I've been hiding in these woods since then, and I cannot help but feel anger at everything. I need to go to her. Yes, that would be the only possible salvation and way to reunite with her. Now, all I need to do is find that valley.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so.
This story happened just a few years back when I was visiting an old friend in Cologne, while at the same time taking advantage of him as a free stay for a meeting with my LARP group. For those of you who don't know what LARP is, it's basically real-life role-playing. Imagine a D&D game, but instead of people sitting around a table with dice, you have people actually dressed up as their characters, actually role-playing in real life. LARPing has been my hobby since I was 14, and after I got a job that paid pretty well, I started to go a bit more all out when it came to stuff for my hobby. One of the things I spend a solid amount of money on was my character's armor, which is important for this story, and specifically the chainmail I wear under my outer armor. After the meeting of my group, I got mostly out of my LARP outfit, because I really didn't want to walk through Cologne-Mulheim, which is one of the more dangerous parts of the city, dressed as a medieval knight. But since I couldn't fit it all in my backpack, I kept my chainmail on, as well as my tunic and pants. On my bus ride home, I noticed this guy that seemed to have an eye on me, but I assumed it was just because I still looked very out of place. When he got off at the same station as me, I didn't really pay him much attention, and when I was almost at my friend's place, I decided to call him, asking if we should meet and get a doner, which he agreed to before I even ended my question. I arrived at our meeting spot first and waited, when I noticed the guy from the bus again, who was now walking straight towards me. I got closer to the wall to make space, but he didn't pass me. Instead, he stopped before me and pulled a knife on me, demanding my bag, wallet, and phone. I was willing to give him my wallet, but tried to explain to him that the bag only had some armor and foam weapons in it. But it seemed that even just talking was enough to set this guy off, and suddenly I felt 2 fast, stinging punches in my stomach. It hurt like hell, and I dropped down to the floor. Then the guy grabbed my bag. I hardly remember what happened next, as I was barely able to notice anything other than the voice in my head screaming, "You got stabbed." So the next thing I knew, my friend was shaking me, and my bag was open with all my stuff over the ground. He was holding my helmet with blood on it, and he said he saw the guy throwing my stuff around after the bag was almost likely too heavy and big for him. So my friend, seeing me on the floor, managed to grab the first thing he could, which was the helmet, and bashed the guy with it until he ran away. We later checked my stomach, and even though I had 2 giant deep blue bruises that hurt like hell, I only had small cuts, since the chainmail had stopped the knife making too much damage. Until this day, I get sick in the stomach when I think back to it, and remember that if I had not worn a piece of my LARP clothing that day, I would probably be dead. Literally killed over a bag full of costumes, 150 euros in my wallet, and a 10-year-old phone. This world is so messed up.
Before I even get to my story, I want to emphasize the point of me writing this. There was more than enough blame for what happened to go around for all of us. The decision was ours to cut corners. Trusting our mother's home to a stranger was stupid. No one denies that. However, the events that unfolded as a result were 100% not our fault. We did everything society tells us to do. The police were called, and their job was to protect my sister. They failed in their job. This is on their hands. My number one aim is to impress upon you to know that it's important to fully vet any individual before allowing them to access your home. The following story is written to drive home this very important point. At the end of 2019, just before Christmas in fact, my mother passed away from a long-term illness. So I was already married and set up a home on my own. My mother left her home to my younger sister, Emily. Emily had been renting up until this time. Release was just ended, so she moved in until she was sure of what she was going to do with it. She knew she had my support. Regardless of her decision, my wife and I threw her a surprise housewarming party for her. At the party, one of Emily's coworkers gave her a kitten as a gift. She was unable to have any pets in her apartment. It was love at first sight. The weeks after the party were life as usual for all of us. Emily managed to litter train the kitten, and all was going well. Just before Valentine's Day, Emily's employer notified her of a business conference she was required to attend. It was part of her job, and this will be a first trip since she had moved into the new house. Normally, this will be simple, but now with the kitten, things were a tad more complicated. My family was unable to watch the kitten because of my daughter's allergies. Kenneling was briefly considered until the price was found to be too great. Besides, she didn't like the idea of her precious little angel being locked up for 3 days. She chose to search on Craigslist for house sitters. An earlier call to a service proved too high. Also, she found this young girl around 19 who claimed to be an independent house sitter. They spoke first on the phone, then met at the house so she could look around. The girl seemed kind and professional. After agreeing on an amount, the deal was set. 2 weeks later, Emily kissed her kid goodbye and left her trip. She checked in the first night, and all sounds like it was going well. 2 days later, she returned to a nightmare. The clean, beautiful home she had left was now scattered with clothes and dirty dishes. When she confronted the girl got mad and said she wasn't a maid. Things only got worse from there. My sister was horrified to see that the litter box was full, and the kitten had already begun going on the floor. Certainly not the poor cat's fault. And this infuriated my sister, and she refused to pay the girl. An argument broke out, and the police were eventually called. They really couldn't do much other than force the girl to leave the property. But the girl was furious. She vowed she'd get back at my sister as she left. This was all set in front of the police, but they obviously didn't take that threat seriously. The officer went on their way, and my sister began cleaning up the mess inside. A few days passed, and Emily tried to put the experience behind her. That Friday, soon after returning from work, a man rang the doorbell and asked for her. She identified herself, and the man began demanding the money owed to the young girl. My sister calmly explained the situation, but the only grew more aggressive. Although she was now terrified, she held her ground and refused. This was when the man backhanded her. She fell back and hit her head on the floor. Unfortunately, it wasn't done. He approached her and demanded the money again. My sister, who was clearly concussed, didn't answer, so he punched her unconscious. Apparently, while she was out, he entered the house and stole all the cash from her purse. But the time she had awakened, he was gone. It took her several minutes to crawl to her phone and call 911. They arrived soon after, and she was rushed to the hospital. I'm happy to say that there's no long-term physical injuries, but mentally, Emily was a mess, and still is, honestly, to be frank. And I know the identity of the man and his location and would have killed him. Fortunately, I regained my senses and agreed to leave it in the authorities' hands, despite their inability to prevent it. The responsible parties were found and arrested within a couple of days. It wasn't some great mystery after all. The man who assaulted Emily was an ex-boyfriend of the young girl. She had promised him half of the money to retrieve it. The young girl claimed she never or intended anyone to be hurt. But her threat in front of witnesses, cops at that, sealed her fate. She managed to get away with probation because she had no priors, or acts, on the other hand, had a long record. He was given 3 years. But once the COVID crisis began, he was released early. The entire family was less than happy to hear of the lenient sentences. But criminals getting off easy is now new under the sun of these days. In the months since the attack, everyone has done their most to be there for Emily. Her recovery is going well, and she seems to be responding to therapy. The lockdowns approved the blessing for her, she'd been able to heal at a much slower and calm pace. Until restrictions are lifted completely, she'd been approved to work from home, or little furry friend has served as a priceless companion for her during these terrible times. Although some may say he was the cause of this whole awful mess. Uncle glad he's been around to keep her company.
So I was scrolling through the subreddit Creepy Encounters, and it reminded me of a story that happened to my twin sister and I about 2 years ago. We were 22, almost 23 when it happened, and as we'd moved to a different town to pursue our studies, we'd only come home for the holidays. It was a summer's evening, and our father wanted to cook us all something, but was missing a few things, so we all decided to go to a little grocery shop in the city centre. It was too late to go to a supermarket and a bit too far. My father didn't want to go too far for just a few things that were easy to find closer to home, if a bit more expensive. And when we got there, he stayed in the car and sent my sister and I in to get the things we needed. We were discussing which brand we wanted and the price, and an old guy, enough to have grandkids, interrupted us. He asked if we were twins, which is obviously a question we are used to hearing. So we smiled politely and answered that yes, we are twins. Cue the, "Oh, you look so alike" spiel. For the record, we don't think so. But we are used to each other, so we know all the differences between our physical appearance. Then the question followed, which one came out first? Which always makes me feel uncomfortable. But when they're nice, I try not to show my discomfort. But then this guy started asking if we had boyfriends, if we wanted to have children, and if we planned to stay together, etc. And it was starting to get creepy. But as I'm quite the introvert, I didn't say it outright, but did make sure to show it in my body language, that I was immensely creeped out. I turned away from him and looked at the cash register. He then started to say that he wanted to marry my sister, that her eyes were a mirror, and that he could see she is so kind and docile. Even if it was creepy, I couldn't help but laugh in disbelief, because really, my sister, kind and docile. She is actually so sassy and savage, and I love her for it. He said their children would be so beautiful, and at this point it was past being creepy, and I was getting really pissed. Why the fact that we are twins make him and other people in general think they can say things like that, or ask personal questions. I was also getting really annoyed because my sister and I are super protective of each other. I said that she was not going to marry him, and that it was absolutely creepy that a guy old enough to have grandchildren would say to someone potentially young enough to be his granddaughter that he wanted to marry her and have children with her. We got what we wanted, bought it and left, with the guy behind us trying to apologize and say that he didn't mean it like that. As we were walking out, still ignoring the dude, my sister told me that I should have just ignored him because he wasn't worth it. I don't think we told our dad, because we didn't want him to worry, even though he would have definitely agreed the guy was way out of line. He would have also said that we handled it properly by telling him off, then ignoring him and leaving.